I fished where I knew bass lived, and I fished slow. I just tried to and a lot of people knew that. You just had to outfish the guys that were in front of you, and you had to fish a little slower, a little more methodical, and just stay in the game. And I made that work a lot of times on a horrible practice.
Yeah, you can take it to the...
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome back to Take It to the Bank podcast. I'm your host, Ben Ballou. Today, we got the goat. Now, these kids have been talking about goats, here for the past few years. This guy's been called the goat for probably the last 10. And it could be because he has whipped on everybody on the FLW tour for many, many years. Want to give a big round of applause for Mr. Andy Morgan, the original goat.
I don't know about the original.
But I want to thank Andy for taking out some time. He's about to load up and go head up north and do some practice fishing. He's probably been shooting his bow a little bit and getting ready, dialed in to run one through a big old whitetail somewhere in the country. He travels all over doing that too. I'm assuming you're kind of like Charlie Ingram in the fact that you just fish so you can hunt.
100% fact. It's funny you said that about the bow, because right before I walked in here and got on the podcast with you, I set my bow right up against the edge of the back door. It's sitting right there. So when we get done, I'm going to start shooting this afternoon. I've been shooting a little bit, but I try to shoot maybe an arrow or two every day. So it's sitting there ready to roll.
Now, are you still sponsored by a boat company?
No, that was back some time ago, way back before COVID. But now, no, I shoot a Matthews, and I hunt with, me and Levi Morgan hunt together. So whatever he shoots, I shoot.
That makes sense. Now, y'all are related, correct?
Absolutely. Well, no, actually not. It's a weird thing, and I get asked that a lot. And it's really strange because his dad is Mark Morgan. My dad is Mark Morgan. He's Levi Morgan. I'm Andy Morgan. And we even sort of are similar. We're both 6'4", 220. And everybody said, are y'all brothers? Are y'all kin? Well, years ago, we were fishing on Chickamauga down here, and it was me and Levi and a friend of ours, Dylan Christianberry. And some guy was coming down the bank. We're just mauling them out here on the rattle trap on Chickamauga. And this old guy comes down through there and says, man, alive, you boys are killing. I said, yeah, I got these two boys out here. He goes, are you their daddy? I said, yeah, I'm their daddy. And I went from Andy to Paul. Now they both call me Paul. I'm Daddy Morgan now. But yeah, we get asked that a lot if we're kin.
Okay, so y'all are just good friends and met each other through fishing, hunting, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I met him at the SHOT Show. It's probably been 12 years ago now. And I knew Levi liked to fish. And of course, we were in the filming the hunting show back then, Moultrie's The Hit List. And it was the Golden Moose Awards. I think we're in the Mossy Oak room or something. And I ran into Levi, and we got to chit-chatting, and he's fished with me down here on Chickamauga and Dale Holla, just whatever's around close, wherever they're biting. He comes down every spring, and we get that revolved into hunting every fall together. So we run around a lot together since that day 12 years ago.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Now, if you could only hunt one species, is it ducks? Is it deer? Is it elk? Is it turkey? What is Andy Morgan's very favorite thing to chase?
Man, that's a pretty tough one. But when it really comes, and you'll agree with this, when push comes to shove, and you talk about a lot of laughs, a lot of fun, and you know where I'm going with this, it's going to be something with a webbed foot. That duck hunting's hard to beat, man. It's so social, and
exactly.
we've got a pretty good duck hold, and it's just always a lot of fun. You don't have to kill them, you know what I mean, to have a great time. And I know that's a big cliche. Everybody says that, but because we typically do kill them. We do. We got a good spot, but it's just a hell of a lot of fun. It's hard to pass that up. Now, a very, very close second is bow hunting. Very close.
Now, I'm assuming you've killed elk before. Like I
have never killed an elk. I've been on 6 elk trips. I have shot elk before, and I have not recovered a elk. I've had the worst luck with elk. Now, I have passed up some slam dunk shots But once you go and you see a herd bull, I can't make myself shoot just a standard elk, and I should have. It's totally my fault. I should have and went ahead and and filled the tag, but I have not. And I'm not like some huge trophy hunter. But man, when you get close to one of those big giant ones, and you're like, "Hey, I'm gonna roll the dice. I'm gonna roll the dice on a giant elk." It's addicting.
So if you walk in my house, and I'm telling on myself here to all our viewers, you walk in my living room, and the very first thing you see are 3 elk over 350. One's like a 7x6, 2 6x6s. You look over to your left, and there is a 194 whitetail. That's a mainframe 10 with a kicker,
Unbelievable.
with a drop off of it. And then you look beside it, and there's a 178 15 pointer. That's a 15 point, kind of got some non-typical points, but pretty straight. And then there's a 140-inch 8-pointer, which is a doggone good 8-pointer, right?
You better believe it.
Out of all of those animals, I killed the 8-pointer. That's the only one I've shot. My wife has killed everything else. And it's kind of emasculating, because when, like, the guy comes over that works on the washing machine, or, the dishwasher delivery guy comes up to the door that kind of hunts, and he kind of pokes in. He's like, "Oh, man, you hunt a little bit?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I hunt some." "Well, tell me about that elk you killed." Well, my wife killed that one." "Well, what about this giant 11-point whitetail over here?" I'm like, "Well, my wife killed that one too." So I'm glad she doesn't fish, just for the point that I want to be better at her than at something, because she's she's a better hunter than me all the way around. She's a bow hunter. Like, she, all those elk was killed with a bow. And she said that she had rather, if she could only chase elk in the mountains bow hunting in September, she would quit everything else if she had to pick one. She's like, it's like turkey hunting on steroids.
Oh yes, that's so awesome. I knew of her credentials years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, I heard about these things, these elk, obviously through Charlie and the whitetails, and I'm like, golly bum, I forgot that she had killed them all with a bow. That is impressive.
Yeah.
Very impressive.
And she's not, nothing against a lot of female hunters out there, but, sometimes they just kind of go and sit in a stand and that kind of thing. She hangs her own stand, does the walking, does the scouting. She's got and everything's free range too. So nothing's been the high fence or anything like that, but it's pretty wild when we move. I literally have to take an enclosed trailer and load up nothing but animal mounts. And I'm like, everybody has to do that for their wife. But there's your little story about me and the hunting. So, like, I can't ever top it,
I mean, bro, I can tell you right now, that is badass. That's just all I can say. She is a badass. That is cool as it gets.
She is. And, like, I killed the biggest deer of my life here on our property. Was a 140-inch 8-pointer. Like, watched him all summer. Shot him my first afternoon I went. Like, great big deer for Middle Tennessee for sure. And he's the smallest thing in my living room. Probably the biggest one I'll ever shoot, and smallest thing in my living room.
Well, my wife is a lot of the same. She's killed several big whitetails only with a bow. And now I do most all the work, hanging the stands, doing the scouting, etc. But as far as when it comes to hunting, sitting in the stand all day during the rut, she's tougher. She's tougher than anybody that I hunt with. And Levi will back that up 100%. I mean, she'll sit all day, she'll hike, she'll carry a backpack, she does what it takes, and she gets shots and she shoots some big whitetails. And she's freaking mentally and physically tough.
That's the way Anna is.
Yeah.
That's the way she is. She'll hunt all day and be happy about it. I get bored. I really like hunting. I don't like waiting.
Yeah. You're kind of like me. What gets me, so I'm good early in the season, September, October, even into the first 2 weeks in November, then my mind starts to really slip. I get to thinking about, because I start hearing those geese migrate in the Midwest. You start hearing no more mallard ducks fly over you before daylight, and I'm like, ooh wee.
Yeah, that's
my mind is gone.
I deer hunt just to take enough time to take up some time before duck season.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But that's enough about hunting talk. It is the middle of June, and fish are biting all over the country.
Yes.
I don't care if you're in Florida. I don't care if you're in California, Alabama, Texas, Tennessee, Wisconsin, Minnesota. Fish are biting everywhere. This is a great time to go fishing. Kids are out of school. Got to deal with some pleasure boaters now that we've not dealt with all spring, which is not the most fun, but that's okay. Let's talk a little bit about the Tennessee River and how you approach it this time of year. You've won $3 million over on the FLW over the past few years. Know what you're talking about. And you are a shallow water guy, as you are a flipper. That's your deal. Now, obviously, you're a lot more. You get billed like that, and most of the guys that, like Greg Hackney, for instance, Greg's a flipper, but Greg can do a whole lot of other things extremely well, and you're a lot the same way. So let's talk about how you are approaching, a body of water there close to you. Let's say Chickamauga, one of your home lakes. Let's talk about how you're approaching it right now in the 1st of June.
In the 1st of June, well, I mean, typically being 1st of June, it kind of depends on, your weather conditions, as you well know. First thing you've got to look at the 1st of June right here, especially at home, is the shad spawn still lingering? So if the shad spawn's still lingering, and it kind of is even right now, it's starting to really tail off. And you really don't notice that. I mean, it's one of these deals right at daylight, that first 30, 45 minutes, maybe even an hour of daylight. You can kind of tell that's still going on. You can still kind of see it maybe up till 9 o'clock, just because maybe the presence of the birds on a marina dock, the presence of birds on some clay points, they'll linger around just for a little while if they're still hungry and they didn't capitalize early. And some of those fish will do the same exact thing. But you really got to make sure you take that in consideration. And also, and even right now that's going down, we didn't talk about this the other day, but the mayfly hatch. So once the mayflies start, usually that's the 1st of June, you got to keep your eye open. That always holds some fish shallow. Those fish come off of those river drops and stuff and linger shallow on into the morning just because of those mayflies. Not necessarily they're eating the mayflies, but they are eating the bluegill and other small fish that are eating the mayflies.
Let's mayfly hatch a little bit. I've seen big mayfly hatches. I've fished a few of them. I've never caught fish out of a mayfly hatch. So talk to me about how you approach that, what you look for, and some baits and techniques, that kind of thing.
Well, I mean, it's one of those deals. It's not necessarily, you won't notice it for a little while. Like, damn, there's a bunch of fish up shallow. Why do I keep getting some bites when it's kind of odd? The water's already jumping up near 80 degrees on the surface temperature. Typically, those fish are moving out hard. They're moving out to those river drops, and they do that. I mean, that's a staple. But you can still catch a big one or two if you notice, and it's just a matter of, you see the mayflies. Are you seeing the mayfly hulls floating on the water?
You can see them everywhere.
Yeah, you're seeing them. I saw them at Kentucky Lake all week last week. I knew those mayflies were there. And typically, like I say, always, there's going to be some fish that stay around the bank, because you'll start catching more and more fish on a buzzbait. You'll even catch them, throwing a thunder cricket, a chatterbait. They'll linger around, and you're like, even so, last week I caught a couple of big smallmouth on the bank. And it's 100% because of the mayflies. Yeah, I mean, you'll see them up. I mean, literally, dude, they will be up in 18 inches of water, and they're actually chasing bluegill. They're not necessarily, crashing in and eating a mayfly. They will eat mayflies, don't get me wrong, but it's all about that bluegill and what's around the bank. It's all food source. You've got a little bit of a shad spawn lingering, and you've got a mayfly hatch overlapping that. You've pretty much got good bank fishing all day long. Now, winning a tournament, it's not that easy to do, obviously, on the bank in June, because the ledge fishing is so dominant. So it's a little off the beaten path, but there is windows that you can catch a big stringer or get a start on a big stringer up shallow in the mornings.
especially fishing the format that you're in right now. It doesn't bode well for shallow fishing as a whole,
No.
just because you're looking for those 5 or 6 good bites. But for 99% of our listeners out there that aren't fishing an every fish counts format, you can only weigh in the best 5. And this is a dang good way to catch 5 good ones.
Absolutely, man. I mean, I've done well in June before, really going against the grain and not jumping out on the ledge because, I mean, face it, everybody that's fishing in June primarily is fishing a ledge. So it's crowded. So you might get one stop to yourself, maybe two stops that you get to yourself and get to a school first or second to where you might catch a big weight. But after that, I mean, you're gambling. You better know something extra or have something up your sleeve that a better bait, a better way, a better technique that they're biting to where you can jump out in front of the field. But going against the grain and off the beaten path always was a really good way to catch a 22 pound bag and not be bothered. It'd be kind of sneaky about it. Now that wouldn't move around every day. To catch them shallow 3 or 4 days in a row was always a challenge. But if you've got it all to yourself, you got a shot at it.
Go back to those same areas. You've got to bounce around to another creek, another area of the lake. You know, in the instance of Kentucky Barkley, you may have to go over on Barkley a day or two to catch them for a 4-day tournament.
Yeah, and your window's pretty short. Like I said, a lot of times you need to catch you a couple of good ones early, really before the sun, gets up over those ridges and gets down on the water, because that was the time to make hay. If you could catch you a couple of 5 pounders and maybe a 3.5 early, then you had a good shot to catch a big stringer shallow and never make a cast at a ledge. Now, you need that in your back pocket. You need to know those ledges and know your opportunity if you draw out boat 3 or you draw out boat 16. Now, in the format that I'm in, every fish counts. That window, even if it is open, you can catch 5 or 6 good ones early. You're still going backwards, man, because they're going to beat you to death with a minimum fish of a 1.8 or a 2 or whatever it is. You just can't get enough bites. But for a big stringer, absolutely, that still plays.
Let's talk about what you're looking for in a mayfly hatch. For instance, like shad spawn to me is pretty easy to find. Boat docks, hard stuff, grass edges if there's grass, lily pads,
Yes.
all that stuff. You can roll a spinnerbait or a swim jig or a chatterbait up there, and if they're following back, they're spawning. Like that's easy to find. Now, when you get to the boat ramp in the morning before daylight, and you're seeing these little rafts of mayfly shells that are on the water, where are you going to start looking for them?
You start. I mean, it depends on what end of the lake you're on. For one, too. If you've got a bunch of boat docks, they're going to be around dock lights, street lights, and you never really know, dude. I've seen them on everything. Any green limb that's over in the water, a cypress tree or whatever that may be, those flies will be up on those green limbs. Bluff banks. I mean, they can be anywhere. You just gotta keep your eyes open and keep looking, especially when you're seeing them floating. I mean, they're coming downstream if there's any current. You just keep looking. You're gonna find them, and you can ride around at night too and see them when they come out on those lights. I mean, and typically it's a big hatch for the most part. There might be several miles that they're hatching out. So you just got to just keep your eyes open and just keep looking. Just kind of like the shad spawn. You can't predict where it's really going to be. You just got to start looking. You just keep your eyes peeled. And shallow fishing to me is always small. You got to find it. You just got to keep looking till you find it and make good decisions. You can't miss your window or you're behind that day. And, catching 5, if you don't catch them early, sometimes can be a real challenge.
And you and I had this conversation earlier. That's kind of the bane of a shallow fisherman. It's a lot of times you can catch 12 pounds with 3, but getting 5 bites, 5 keeper bites throughout the day is pretty tough.
It can be.
Once we start seeing, you can literally, I've ran up the lake before and saw mayflies, they'll turn a sycamore tree that's bright and bushy and green completely brown.
Yeah.
Once you see some stuff like that, what are you throwing in them? What's your first couple of baits on a mayfly hatch?
It's hard for me not to throw a buzz bait, dude. I love a buzz bait when they get on those flies because you can cover ground. I mean, really fast. I usually put a horny toad up on it, a zoom horny toad that I can skip, back under vines, back under green bushes, back under cypress trees, boat docks, whatever it may be. You can be really accurate and get it way back in places, and you can move it fast, and they'll come and get it pretty much. And you can just cover a lot of water. And a buzz bait catches big ones. That's my favorite way. Other than that, you've got to have a flipping stick laid out, either with a jig or a piece of plastic. I mean, it's, when you're going by under docks, green limbs, cypress trees, bluff ends, whatever you may be doing, that flip stick needs to be laying right there pretty close.
And then let's say we find them on overhanging trees on a bluff. There's mayflies there. You're seeing bluegill pop up. You're taking, now, do you start with a black buzz bait or a white buzz bait?
The brighter the sky, I'll typically use maybe a white.
Okay.
But as everything starts to darken down a little bit, maybe right at daylight, I'll start with sometimes that gray ghost horny toad, then maybe even go to a black. I just kind of rotate through there and see what you can get a bite on. I don't see it makes a huge difference. I'll call them on everything under the sun as long as that little sucker's gurgling on the top and there's a bass by, he's likely to come and get it. He's going to come and look at it. And a lot of times, if they're really not eating it well, and typically they do in June, they don't miss it that much. But if they are, I'll throw a thunder cricket or chatterbait, whatever your favorite vibrating jig is, and they'll bite that as well. And I like a green pumpkin or so in that, and they'll bite that sometimes when they won't bite anything else.
I also noticed that a lot of times the biggest fish in the lake may not be out on a drop, ganged up with 150 others.
That's right.
Those great big ones, those 6, 7, 8, 9 pounders, sound like Roland there. 6, 7, 8, 9 pounder. But they kind of hang out to themselves. They may be, on one stump on a point, or they may be, hanging out around one cypress tree. And the reason they get that big is because they're eating bluegills all the time.
Correct. A lot of the biggest fish in the lake, and especially on Chickamauga, since we've got these giant ones around and we've had them several years, they're not very social. It's like if you caught a great big one somewhere, you typically didn't catch a lot of fish, and he was somewhere isolated. And I've seen that more and more over the years, and it gets repetitive. I know even back way up in the summer, some of the guys here that caught 10, 11, 12 pounders in the summertime, they only caught 2 bass that day. And you thought, well, so in a weird spot he caught that thing, but they're just really not that social. And I'm talking just an older fish, you like a 5 or 6 pound male. He's kind of odd because he's a great big and he's an older fish if he's 5 or 6 pounds. And lots of times, dude, they're isolated. So, like I said, you're off the beaten path when you're fishing for that fish. You're not fishing for a huge amount of bass. I mean, he's isolated. He's not that social, and you're just fishing for 1 or 2.
When do you decide if you're going to fish shallow or if you're going to fish deep? Are you just looking for mayfly shells and looking for shad spawn, and that's going to make you want to go shallow versus being out on a bar somewhere? Or what when you get there that morning, what is making you make the determination, or are you kind of bouncing back and forth all day?
Yeah, I end up usually bouncing back and forth. I mean, the presence of the bait, either the shad spawn or the mayflies, has a big impact on what you need to look for, or I typically do, or the amount or lack of current. I mean, on the Tennessee River, if you don't have current, those fish out wide on those bars are weird. Now, the live scopes made that a lot more doable because you can track them down and run them down and catch them suspended up a lot better, and you can catch big ones doing that, as you well know. I know you're really good at that. You can go to stumps, you can catch single fish when that current's not moving. But when the current is moving, the presence of bait, as far as the mayflies and the shad, are not around the bank of that ledge bite. If you've got a decent boat number and you can get on a place, it's hard not to go do that, because if you run to a school and they're there and they hadn't been molested yet that day, your chances to catch 6, 7 fish your first 6 or 7 casts are really good. And you can easily, this time of year, 1st of June, those first 6 or 7 you catch there, you've got you 18 to 22 pounds, especially on Chickamauga. You get to a fresh school, They're typically good ones.
Let's pull up a map and let's talk about some deep fish first. And then we're going to kind of roll back up the river and look at some more shallow fish. Let me get this sound around. Share my screen. Okay, so you should be able to see that there. This is just kind of the midsection of Lake Chickamauga. Out here's a bunch of power lines that cross. There's some pockets right here.
Yeah, Sequoia.
Yep. Yes, sir. So the big thing to me when you're looking at the Tennessee River as a whole, it's all current related. And the first thing a man needs to be doing is looking at where current is coming from and where it's going and where it's hitting. Now, everybody, when they very first start ledge fishing, at least I did this, is let's look at this bar right here. I always wanted them to be back here, not in the current. Sitting out of the current, that way they, kind of in this ditch, that way they could run up and eat them something as it goes over top of them. But the more I've ledge fished and the more I've idled and the more I've hunted and looked, they're not on the backside of stuff. They're right here where the current is beating on the hardest.
That's correct.
Almost every time.
Almost every time.
So is that a good spot? Is that somewhere you've caught them before? Is that what you're looking for? Do you look for something a little bit different? Maybe even out here on this main river spot where this creek dumps in.
No, you hit on something there that's repetitive. So that's over and over and over again. You're going to find those fish on the heads of everything. Typically, when there's a fair bit of current, that's where they're going to position. That's always a staple. The only trouble with that is anymore, a lot of people know that. That's the first place they're going to go. Those typically become community holes pretty fast. Which is, look, I mean, community holes, everybody can say what they want about a community hole. It's a community hole because it's damn good. And fish,
bass on it.
Fish go there over and over and over every year. The good Lord don't make any more structure that's on the bottom as far as contour. It changes a little bit over time with what the current does to it and washes stuff in, washes stuff away. But typically everything's the same year after year, and those fish do the same thing typically year after year. Anymore, though, when you're looking and idling and you've got a lot of time to do that, I mean, it's all about sneak holes and trying to be sneaky, find them on straight bars to where there's really not a lot of difference in contour to where it just takes time to locate them. I mean, looking at the map,
something like this bar right here.
Yeah, exactly. You gotta get some weird stuff to have a school to yourself. Now, I'm talking especially living on Chickamauga. There's nothing sacred anymore, or very little sacred anymore, that's real distinct on that map. I mean, it's lots of people know the head of everything is pretty much going to be one of the first places they go. And if there's current on, there's always going to be a bass there to be caught. Hard to get to that place unless you're boat one. And it's even hard to get to that place if you're boat one because there's people going out before daylight sitting on it. So a lot of that stuff gets hammered pretty fast. And there's a lot of bass caught there. But the sneaky stuff, maybe on back in the ditch, if there's a little turn or there's just a hard spot just on a straight edge, that's the places anymore that still produce for guys that get out there and idle and fish and look. I mean, you can see ditch mouth, and there's many ditch mouths up through there. I mean, you can look at all those island heads and stuff. That's the mouth of Saudi. I mean, there's a half a dozen places right there that they get, and I've caught it. There's way more than that. Especially the straight edges, you might catch and find a school and catch them for a while, and they may not be there again. They may not be there the rest of the year. I see places on there now that we're looking at that I've caught them and never caught them again there. They move up and down those bars. They probably follow bait. And, I mean, you got to look. I mean, you got to look for stumps. Stumps are a big thing. Anything to break the current, any kind of structure out there on those bars, I mean, that's always a factor. So it's hard to say, just look here and don't look there thing. You know what I mean?
Yep. And a good friend of ours, though you know him really well too, Rick Cheatham, he's a camera guy for us. Probably the best fisherman you've never heard of.
Yeah. Yeah, Rick used to practice with me over at Kentucky Lake years ago. He owned a company called RC Lures, and he made jigs and spinner baits and stuff like that. And me and him, when I'd go to Kentucky Lake, he'd always jump in a boat and practice with me. So me and Rick fished a lot. I mean, I guess pretty much every year that I went over there, I bet God, that's been 20
Right.
years ago, 25. But fishing was really good. Me and Rick had some really big days back in that era.
But something I've learned from Rick, and again, Rick's a absolute phenomenal fisherman, catches them everywhere he goes. His protege, the kid that he taught everything's Trey McKinney, that has probably had the fastest ascension in the sport of bass fishing it's ever seen, as far as from high school to a top level pro. I
Yeah,
mean,
I
dude's
fished with Trey. He brought him down here, and I fished with him. It's been God several years ago, and he was like 12, and he was a good fisherman then.
right, right. But Rick's thing is you never say never in bass fishing, and I think that's something that all of us can learn is you rule nothing out until you rule it out. Well, it's the 1st of June. They've got to be on river channel drops. Well, there's going to be some on river channel drops, but there also may be some back in the creeks on creek channel drops. There also may be some shad spawning on a marina. There may, you never can rule something out until you rule it out. Now, if you go fish 3 marinas and they're not there, then you ruled it out.
Yeah. Well, you look at what you're doing, as far as your time, how many days of practice do you have? How much time do you have on that body of water? You can only look at so much stuff. Then, and you do get stuck, and I know I have for years. I try to make my way work. So I'm going to dig hard, hard, hard at that until I prove to myself it's not going to work. Then a lot of times during the tournament, I just have to go this more or less blind and go, okay, I'm gonna have to go throw a worm on a drop, or I'm gonna have to do this because whatever I'm doing isn't working. But to be honest, 90% of the time, I can make that work somewhere. If I keep looking hard, hard, hard and go, 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 daylight till dark, typically I'll figure a way to catch them that I want to catch them and like to catch them. And I've built a career around that by hell, just not giving up. I'm going to make this work. They might just open my window, and there's only so much area that I can make this work. But I would really press the issue. But also, there's times it just falls apart and you bomb. I mean, so I guess you kind of learned, or I did over the years, when I couldn't make it work, I always had to fall back on a shaky head or whatever it is and take my whooping, try to get me a check out of it. And honestly, when I started winning AOYs, that's how I did it. I just have to fall back on something that I really didn't want to do, and I wouldn't practice, but I knew I could get bites. And I would just go, hey, I know I'm not going to make the cut in this one. And just see if I can get a top 30. And a lot of times you would. And sometimes I would even come back, and what I did would start to play during the event. And you'd start to notice it, and you're like, hey, this is going to work now. It rained, or it got really windy, or whatever it is, and conditions totally changed. Then you could go play your game. But sometimes your game wasn't working, and you had something, you had to fall back on something else. You had to be really open minded, and just what Rick said, never be shocked. You can be a little surprised about where they are, but never be shocked.
You brought up a really good point there as far as you practice your way, and then there was a lot of tournaments that you would back off and just do something to get a lot of bites. When I truly suck in a tournament, and I've done this a million times, sucked in tournaments, it's because I don't generate enough bites. Yeah. So what are your fallback baits? What are your fallback techniques that you go to when you're sucking in practice?
It all depends on obviously the time of year and the water temperature and etc. But I mean, typically I would either extremely pick up the pace with a crankbait, a vibrating jig, thunder cricket, etc., and really burn a lot of water down, or I would do total opposite. I'd take a worm, a shaky head, whatever I had to do, and fish extremely slow in areas that I was sure bass lived. Like, let's take, for example, a Beaver Lake, Prairie Creek, right there in Prairie Creek. Every bass in the lake has been weighed in at some point and released in Prairie Creek. So if it all is to pieces and I couldn't get bites doing anything I wanted to do, and it's slick calm, all the conditions are going against the way I like to fish. Water's gin clear, it's slick calm. I'd never leave. I had a rule. I would never leave sight of Prairie Creek. I fished where I knew bass lived, and I fished slow. I just tried to and a lot of people knew that. You just had to outfish the guys that were in front of you, and you had to fish a little slower, a little more methodical, and just stay in the game. And I made that work a lot of times on a horrible practice. Now, that's a 5-fish limit. I was trying to catch 5, and during the course of a day, you hope to catch a 3 or 4 pounder, and a couple of 2s and a couple of nice keeper Kentuckys for a pound. I had 9 or 10 pounds. Now, back then, that was a decent bag over there at times when conditions were bad. And like I said, it depends on where you are, all your conditions, what you had to kind of do. But you kind of learn little things like that. Just stay around fish super slow. And you see a lot of guys that have been really successful. Mark Davis, that comes to mind. How many times have you seen Mark just get out and burn the lake up? Typically, he's fishing slow, methodical, and you got it. Super slow, crawling the worm around. End of the day, Mark Davis, 5'5" alive, 19 pounds, 4 ounces. You're like, what in the hell? I caught 3 bass today. You know, you talk to Mark, man, you caught him good today, man. I had 6 bites. You're like, Well, a couple years, 3 or 4 years of that, I'm learning on I'm fishing too fast, and I ain't fishing around where the fish are biting. I need to settle down, and eventually you can make that work. Or, like I said, if you did have the conditions, I burn through as much water. You put the trolling motor on 70, pick up a crankbait or your cricket, whatever, and go. If you had the color in the water and those conditions, and the master at that, and won many tournaments and many AOYs, more top 10s than anybody in the world, was Van Dam. He was a master at that. It wasn't like he had great practices. It didn't matter what his practice said. It mattered what he caught during the event. And he might be going left for 3 days of practice. The morning of the tournament, conditions right, he'd go to the right and go. G-O, spinnerbait, flip, whatever, crank, whatever he had to do. There's another one. There's 5 alive for 22 even.
Right.
You know, I mean, saw it over and over and over. So you had a couple of different ways. You had to pick your poison on your conditions.
Move your camera just a tick to your left. You kind of at the edge of it there. Oh, beautiful. Now there we go. That's better. No, and to me, that's something that Live Scope has changed tremendously.
Took it away.
You had to. The guy that went out and covered water, you were making a shit ton of casts at somewhere there was not a bass. And especially kind of the way he does it, that's a little bit different than what you do, because you can't scope them in a bush. You can't scope them in a lay down in a foot of water, typically. But, the efficiency that Live Scope has brought on has changed that tremendously. So, I can tell if a fish is on a bar or not in 30 seconds of me looking around. Like, he's either there or he can't hide.
No. So he's never going to be invisible. Okay. That's something that's never going to change with that. A lot of people say, well, they're going to get used to that. I'm like, how the hell are they going to are they going to be invisible? Are they going to figure out some deal on the bottom to rub mud on them and become invisible? Dumbest shit ever heard. No, they're not going to become invisible. So what the scope did,
that is awesome.
Done, it has kept the window open all the time. I've said this for the last 6 months. I said, once you look at it as a shallow fisherman and you're covering water and the conditions started to change and everything started to line up, as an angler and knowledge, you knew you had a great guess when the window was going to open up, and you had to capitalize for 2 hours. when the window was right. You boom, 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 boom. You didn't catch them all day. Shallow fishing is one of those deals that, dude, it's go, go, go. And you catch them in windows. You catch 3 or 4. Then you don't catch one for 2 hours. Then you catch 3 or 4. You don't get another bite for an hour. Then you catch 6 or 7. When those windows open, you boom, 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 you call them. Live scope is if you're around bass and you can see them and stuff's going on, window is always open because you're like, well, they're not on the bank. I don't see them. Right out here they are. The window's shut on the bank. They're not on the bank. I see this a lot. And I can catch some like this, jerk bait and et cetera, especially when the water's cold. You scan out there in the middle and go, gotcha. You're out here. So I open the window because I'm fishing the bank. They're not there. They're right out here. So the window is open more and more and more with that scope. And those guys that are good with it, and they know the difference between a white bass and a largemouth, or a drum and a smallmouth, I mean, dude, they are deadly because that window is always open.
It kills me. There's so much negativity in our sport, and I'm not trying to go on a live scope rant here by any means.
We're gonna beat that dead horse, yeah.
There's plenty of it, but it kills me the negativity that your average Bubba has about these guys that are scopers. You know, Jacob Wheeler is going to catch them with or without scope. Trey McKinney is going to catch them with or without scope. Even the younger guys that are coming on that are strictly live scopers, the Eastern Father Gills, the Rob G's, these guys that are really, really good at it, they have learned so much from it that they're going to catch them without it. And if you've been out there and tried to compete, and everybody's got it, like that's the thing. Every tournament you go to, yes, there may be, even in little local Wednesday night derbies on Old Hickory, there may be 2 guys out of 25 that don't have it. Everybody's got it. These guys have put the time in, just like you did learning how to cast, just like you did learning how to flip, learning what areas you wanted to go flip. These guys have done that. It's just with a technique that's more dominant because they can't hide. And you can't take that away from them. Like the negativity with these guys fussing about it. Oh, well, it's live scope. There should be an asterisk. This guy's kicked everybody else's ass with live scope. Like he's just better at it than you are. You know what I mean?
Yes, these guys are incredible. All these young guys are absolutely incredible with it. And it's taught all of us more about a bass in 50 times the less time than I learned in my life, because you could physically watch them. You can physically look and go, well, they're not on the bank, or they're not suspended up. They're here. There they are. I mean, you can literally look and see where they are. Now, again, I'm not great with it. I don't know every fish I see what it is species wise, but dude, it's a unbelievable tool to just learn from. I'm not saying you're catching them with it, but you see them and you know how they're reacting to those conditions. So over a couple of years of looking at them and catching a few with it, catching a few on the bank and figuring all that out, you've learned so much more than I did the previous 20 years. You know what I mean?
It's feel bad for the outdoor riders that rode in Bassmaster for 30 years because the last 5 have that book that we thought on that the bass listened to. No, we used to think bass needed cover. Bass don't need no cover. Ain't nothing going to eat a 3-pound bass in that lake.
No,
just comfortable in 60 feet of water down 15 as he is in a bush. I mean, like stuff like that, we would have never known.
No, we were so wrong for so many years, and that scope told us and taught us, and it totally rewrote the book.
I agree. Well, I enjoy talking about live scope with people that are actually have some sense and not just hardcore on one side or the other. It's a fun discussion, especially from people like you that sure enough know what you're talking about. Let's roll back to our map here on Chickamauga, and let's go talk about some areas that we want to go looking shallow. Now, It is a Tennessee River lake. And, if you're on a Dale Hollow, if you're on a Center Hill, any of those Highland Reservoir type lakes, you're going to probably run the backs of the creeks because that's where the shallower water, that's where the dirtier water is typically. Now, on the Tennessee River, Brent Anderson, a really good friend of mine that's a Kentucky Lake guy, has said for years that if you're not on the main drag somewhere, you're not fishing to win. Even if you're fishing shallow, if he's fishing bushes, he's flipping on river islands and river banks, that kind of thing. Are you seeing the same thing at Chickamauga, that you really have to be on the main river to compete?
Yes and no. It just kind of depends on what's going on with rainfall and water level. Because I still see, and I can see these, a lot of times see these fish. Physically see them because it'll be so shallow. I've seen some of the giant ones still in the back of a pocket on a bluegill bed or etc. Now, yeah, he's right in a sense too that a lot of those fish are going to the main river. They are actually going there. But when you've got the presence of grass, milfoil, hydrilla, etc., and we do, especially mid-lake up, some of those fish stay in that grass. I think they stay year-round because even before it tops out in June, you can fish around and look around, and you might get one bite or no bites and see two bass, and both of them be 7-pounders, and they're living back in nothing. Absolutely nothing. And there is windows that you can catch those. To win, a 5-fish tournament, I don't care if they're scoping or not, and you're catch a couple of 3 7-pounders, you're probably going to be in contention to win.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you're looking, I think, what the Sail Creek,
etc. Yep.
Dude, I've seen freaking giant ones back in the creek, in June, but there's fresh water coming in back there, etc. Especially if you had a little bit of rain and it's not running just mud. I've seen giant bass come out of that creek right there. And again,
all the way in the back where it narrows down into an actual creek.
Yes, I've seen them back there to where you think there's not any big ones and you're catching 10 inchers. Then you look over there and a 9-pounder chases your bait up. You're like, oh my God, where did that come from? That's those big old fish that are not very social. And they do live in that kind of stuff. Now, to catch 5 of them in a day, I don't even know that's possible, but there is some freaking big ones, and you do catch some randoms. You catch 2 or 3 on a topwater a day, and liable to be, a couple of them be freaking giant ones. And if you got 3 or 4 3-pounders already in the box, sometimes that's a good one to chase.
That's something that I don't talk about a lot. That's pretty juicy in my opinion because not a lot of people do it. But getting in the very backs, and you're going to cross, like this is a big flat here. And this area right here is going to be super shallow.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of times they're hard to get in. But if you can ever get back to where it necks down, there's current, there's cooler water, and especially as the summer goes along, you can catch some big bags in the backs of places. Now, it's going to take you 2 hours there to fish that, and then you've got to run. Let's go back down here. What's the name of that one? I've been in it. Possum. And then you've got to run all the way back. You got to cross this flat. You got to drag your boat over a bar to get back in here. But then you go in the back of this, and you can only fish 4 or 5 of them in a day. But now you can the water gets a little cooler because they're always spring fed. Sometimes it's fairly clear if that makes it tough at times, but now you can get bites in the very backs of creeks everywhere in the country.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's no guarantee you're going to catch 5 in a day. You're rolling the dice. You're definitely trying to catch big ones. And unfortunately, you kind of got to be the only one that's running that pattern. If you put another boat or 2 in there, it's not going to work out for you. But there's giants caught like that. I see them caught here every year like that. I'm talking fish over 9 pounds. We got big ones here. You're not catching a ton of them. And you're not catching a bunch of 2.5s. You're going in there after a couple of big ones. Then other than that, just like Brent said, especially on this end of Chick, boat docks are a thing as well. Those fish on those channel docks for sure. I mean, that's something never to ignore.
Yeah, right there's a few going up there.
Yeah, I mean, get on any of that stuff. I mean, and you don't really know. And again, we're going to refer back to Rick Cheatham. You know, it's not a guarantee they're going to be on shallow docks. It's not a guarantee they're going to be on deep docks. You got to check them, whether it's deep or shallow. You might catch one at the front of the dock's 3 feet deep. The next one that you catch one under the front of the dock's 10 feet deep. It's just there's a bass under it. Sometimes you just don't know. You just kind of got to fish through those. And of course, obviously, there's blowdowns and there's grass. I mean, there's anything that looks bassy on the main channel. If there's water moving, you've got a shot to catch one.
Let's talk a little bit. Like right here's a bluff that I've fished in the past. Hobo Bluff's what they call it. And guys, if you don't know what a bluff is, it's what a ledge looks like stuck out of the water. It's just a sheer, a sheer rock face that goes straight up. It's going to have the deepest water on the lake on it typically.
That's right.
It's always going to have current on it. Let's talk about bluff fishing, because that's a way that, kind of old school. That's something that people used to target a lot. You don't see a lot of people on them now. Let's talk about how you break down a bluff.
Well, I mean, typically, it's not always, but typically, the beginning and the end of the bluff are always, if they're on bluffs, you're going to get bites on the front and the back side where it tapers into a gravel bar, etc. But bluffs are, again, it's why people don't typically fish them anymore. It's time consuming. Because those fish on bluffs typically aren't really shallow. You're either going to catch them on a jig or cranking or something down them. You gotta work that face. You gotta let your bait sink. I like to fish them with a jig, but bluffs on the Tennessee River, it's kind of a staple, and it's never a bad play. It's one of these deals you got to kind of keep that honest. You need to check them, and I really don't care what time of year. It's always a place that fish use. I mean, if they're going to be close to the bank and they need a little deeper water, that signifies bluff. That's where they go. They love rock. Typically, there's some kind of drift, whether there's a tree lap that's fell off the bluff, or there's just an old log drifted in. There's always some kind of cover there, and if you've got current, they go to cover and they get out of the current in front or behind the cover, and it's always just a staple to get a bite. Not saying you're just going to skin them up and catch 30 keepers, but it's always a place to look for a bite.
Let's talk about, you mentioned when you go flipping, are you starting with a plastic? Are you starting with a jig? What are you flipping?
I always have both. Typically, if I'm fishing rock, it's going to be a jig primarily. And if I'm fishing shallow, especially trees where there's a lot of wood, maybe bushes, I like to roll to a piece of plastic. It's just more efficient. You stay hung less. I don't care what kind of jig you're using. You will get hung more with a jig. It's just efficient wise. The plastic seems to get just as many, if not more bites a lot of times. And it's just, you can just go faster. And anymore, bass fishing to me is a math problem. The faster I can go and get them to bite, the more cover I fish, the more cast I make. It's, you're better off.
Talk about your jig fishing setup, rod, reel, line, jig, etc., and then your plastic flipping setup as well.
Well, typically, actually, we just built a new rod over here at Lou's, one of my flipping sticks, and I've got it dialed in. It's really nice. It's a 7.6. It's usually going to be a medium heavy. I don't like something that's too overpowering unless I'm fishing really, really dense cover with either matted grass or the second row of bushes, which you guys really know about at Kentucky Lake. And it's
we'll talk about them.
Yeah, I don't know who. And it's a 8-3-1, and I like the pitch and skipping reel from Lou's. That's all I pretty much use, and I like to use like a 20-pound fluorocarbon. I'll do the braid and leader thing some back and forth, but my favorite is straight fluorocarbon. With the jig, it's always straight fluorocarbon. With a piece of plastic, I'll rotate braid to fluoro. Depends on how deep I'm fishing in the cover as far as bait, but it's either, if it's a piece of plastic, I'm a sucker for a brush hog. If I'm in the bushes or some kind of wood, that's hard to beat.
That's some old stuff right there.
dude, and it gets big bites. It's
Big
a big
ones.
old bait, and it gets big bites. And a Z crawl, which is always a staple. It's got a lot of action, and especially with like a half-ounce sinker, it falls fairly quick, got some action. Or I mean, heck, I use a worm a lot too. A lot of times I use a straight worm. I mean, you get a lot of bites with your a Cinco type worm. I mean, it gets bites, especially in grass. Why, I don't know. It don't look like anything but a worm, but apparently they really like worms, and it gets a lot of bites. I keep it fairly simple. If you got a straight worm, some kind of piece of plastic, you brush hog or a Z crawl, and a jig with a super chunk junior 90% of the time, and that's pretty simple, man. That's just kind of what I keep on.
Are you a 3/8 or a half or a 5/8? Like what size weight are you starting with? A lot of times you'll dial that in depending on the cover and all that. But
Yeah, correct. I mean, it's say we'll start with a 3/8, but in the spring, if you're fishing really shallow and you're just fishing logs and the cover's not super thick, it's most of the time it's a quarter. If it's 3 feet
quarter.
or less, I like a quarter. Yeah, I want it to fall fairly slow, especially when that water's in the 50s or 60s. You want it to just kind of come down through there and be, I want to give him time to come off the other side of the log and swim over and get it if he feels its presence. And a lot of times they do that. You'll see them do it from time to time in shallow water. You know how you'll see them come over a limb, you're like, oh yeah, you're fixing to eat it. 2 seconds later, it just swims off.
Yeah. Now, will you stay with a quarter this time of year, or do you bounce up to something faster?
It's usually never lighter than a 3/8 when I roll into June. It's 3/8 to a 5/8.
Yeah. Now, personally, I kind of go to that 5/8 size. I'm just like you when they're spawning or pre-spawn, anything like that. A 3/16 to a 5/16 is kind of where I try to stay.
That's right.
If they're spawning, just because you've got to fish that thing slower. But now this time of year, like my start with a 5/8. If I've got to go lighter than that, I will. But now a 5/8 most time will get a bunch of bites.
Heck yeah, you can go faster. You
You
can
can go
go
a lot
faster,
faster.
act faster. The water's generally cleaner. I mean, they'll come from further to eat it. And honestly, the rate of fall is super important. The cleaner the water, the heavier I like to flip. I mean, they'll just
That's
give less opportunity to pick it apart, and they react, and they've got it before they know they've even got it.
that's something I don't think anybody has ever said, but that makes a ton of sense. Dirtier water, you like that clear, the slower fall, but the clearer the water, you need that thing hitting the bottom pretty quick and just letting them swim over and eat it.
Yeah, I want it to go. I don't want to give them a ton of time to think about it. I mean, to be honest, I mean, with fishing pressure anymore, and especially right here where I live on Chickamauga, pretty much every bass you're catching has been caught. They are harder to catch. So even in the winter down here anymore, I mean, used to in the winter, nobody really fished, a handful of guys. But now there's winter trails, and these fish get caught all winter with an Alabama rig and the Mena dude. I mean, that's the time to catch big stringers here. And they get caught. There is no refuge for them anymore. There's no off limits. They get hulled all year, and it does make them harder to fool.
I agree completely. And that's what a lot of people don't realize, that live scope has hurt bank fishermen for that reason right there. Is used to they'd never seen a bait for 3 months between October and March. They'd never saw one. They'd just been eating bait out there in the middle. Nobody could fish for them because we couldn't. Now they've seen baits October, November, January, February, the entire time. They're a lot harder to trick when they get on the bank.
Absolutely. It's not like they got caught off the bank that morning. I mean, they got caught out in the middle, 2 weeks ago.
Right. Well, we're gonna wind this up. I really appreciate your time. Let's talk really quickly. I want Andy Morgan's most embarrassing story that you have had tournament fishing throughout the past 20 years.
God. Other than not catching anything, like I've come to Chickamauga before and roll out here, even in its heyday, and catch 5 that weigh 11 pounds, and everybody in line's got 20. Pretty
Yeah,
embarrassing.
yeah,
But
that happens to everybody.
Yeah, it seems like it happened way too often, though. I guess you just don't forget those. But other than that, I've never done anything just horribly embarrassing. Somehow, I don't really know how. I mean, of course, I fell out of the boat and all that kind of shit before, but I think that's pretty standard as well.
If you spend enough time, you're going to fall out. Okay.
Yeah.
Tell me the wildest thing you've ever seen while you're fishing. Like,
Oh,
two bears cracking up on the side of the bluff, or something random crazy that you've seen.
dude, I don't know. I've seen God everything under the world, from fights to boat wrecks. I've seen two fights back. Well, it's been back several years ago, but at bass tournaments. One on the dock before we left one morning. Pretty good brawl. I mean, fist fights. Everybody. Oh, everybody hearts nowadays on the internet about how they're going to do this and how they're going to do it. Well, it didn't used to be like that. It used to be if you ran your mouth, somebody checkmate you. Well,
Right.
I've seen that twice. People get checkmated. Was pretty interesting.
No
Ended up
doubt.
being funny as hell, but at the time you're like, oh shit, I got to break this up.
For the tournament. This ain't afterwards.
Yeah, I've seen one before and one after. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, I've seen some pretty good ones, man. Of course, that's been back in the day. Used to, like I said, you couldn't get by with mouthing off to some of these old guys, dude. That didn't work out. That didn't work out. But no, I've never seen anything just too terribly, just crazy. Of course, there's a lot of stuff you forget. Hell,
Of course.
I've had snakes in the boat, people that's horrified of snakes and all that stuff, but not
We were
crazy.
we were talking about my good buddy Brent Anderson. He had a video go viral last week. He
I
had
saw it.
he had caught 5, and everybody's like, how does that happen? Well, it's because Brent's a nut, and Brent picks up 5 rattlesnakes. Now, he's got a snake hook. He's trained. He loves them like he's done this forever, but had
Yes,
5 rattlesnakes in his bass boat at one time last week.
he sure did. He sure did. I saw that. One of them was even trying to crawl like under the console.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, dude, he's going to get in the hole and you'll never get him out. I mean, well, how do you get him out? Set it on fire? That'd be my option.
He said, I talked to him after that, and I'm like, dude, he's like, I only caught like 5 rattlesnakes my entire life. And he's like, I'll look for them, right? It's not like I'm running away from them. I go look for them to catch them. And he said, I saw I saw one, I caught it, and like got some videos, and I put it right back. And he's like, I'm trying not to stress these things, or, they were chill. I was chill. Everything was good. He said, but I looked up and I saw what I thought was one kind of on this rock outcropping, and I pick him up, and then I see another head. So I pick him up, and then I see a tail. And he said, I'm like, holy cow, I've got 5 rattlesnakes in my boat right now. And he said, the entire time you can hear me go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He said, because I didn't want one of them to accidentally get up and under my hot foot and me stick my foot in there.
It happened to me last year. So we fished a MLF event on the James River. No. That was wrong. This was at the, God, what's the name of that river in Carolina? That was it. So, dude, freaking snakes everywhere. It just got to the point, and they don't bother me. So, like the second day of practice, I get hung in a cypress tree. I skip up under it. There's a trot line on it. So I get my jig hung on my trot line. So I go over there. It's been raining, so I just got a pair of shorts on, my raincoat, and no shoes. I go over to that cypress tree. Of course, I'm looking like the limbs are laid out they're about knee high. So I get right to that cypress tree and I'm looking in the limbs, thankfully. And I know what a cottonmouth looks like and the difference between a cottonmouth and a common water snake. There's a cottonmouth laid in that bush. He's like knee high to me. So I see him coming and the momentum of the boat's going. So I have to put my rod butt up against the cypress tree and stop me from going right on top of him. I stop and I'm trying to stay back in case he bites me, but he didn't move, but he did fall off. He just nicked the side of my boat and went in the water. I'm like, good. So when he fell off, this is no lie, the limb was like this hanging. When he fell off, the limb came up. I'm like, heavy, like that big around heavy. I'm like, oh my God. So during the event, and I'm going back in these little ditches and creeks, and dude, it's just tangled up limbs. Every limb's got a dang water snake on it. I mean, they're everywhere. So I'm rolling up this creek It's my second day of the tournament. I didn't have a good first day, but I'm catching them pretty good. And I've got like, I don't know, 3 minutes left in the day. And I catch one, I weigh him, he scores, and I move up to like 15th. And I'm like, well, I'm going to get a check out of this. Now I'm just trying to make the cut. And I got 3 minutes to catch one more, and it's going to move me up quite a bit. So I skip a thunder cricket up under a limb. Well, there's a big deadfall, and I get it hung up. And I'm like, ooh. And I mean, it's just on a little twig, but I cannot shake it loose. So I'm against the clock. I look over on this dead limb, and it's a deadfall, and there's a bunch of limbs coming out toward the boat. I see the snake on the limb. I was like, well, when I crash into that, I'm just going to crash into it enough to poke my bait off, bounce off of it, keep going. Well, I crash into it, and I didn't quite get my bait. I mean, I'm like 6 inches from getting my damn bait poked off of there. And I'm watching the snake, and I take my eye off, and I look back. He hadn't fell off of the limb at all. He is out over my boat. Okay, my boat official's sitting in the seat. He's sitting back there with his arms crossed. And I look, and that snake is the dead center of my boat. He's still on the limb, pretty good size one. It's like I said, it's a water snake. And I said, hey, Bub, pretty good sized snake on that limb right there. And he looks, never cracked a smile, never frowned. He looks at him, and he's like right here in his face. He looked at him and go, yep, he's a damn nice one, isn't he? And he just sat back in his chair. He could have cared less. I get my bait off the limb, and I just keep going. Snake never moved, never offered to get in the boat. So I go on. I didn't catch another bass. Day ends. So we come home. I put my boat in the garage, okay? I put my boat in the garage, back it in. We drive home the next day. I back in. We go on vacation. So we're gone. I go to West Tennessee, work on the duck farm for a week. We go to Florida and go to the beach for a week. I come home. I'm talking to a good friend of mine, the duck world, Rusty Creasy. You probably know Rusty. I'm on the phone with him. I go down in my garage. It's been 2 weeks. I go down in my garage, open up the door, walk into my garage. I'm on the phone with him. It's pouring down rain outside. So the threshold of my garage door, there's a little bit of water seeping under the door. I look over at the garage door. Son, there's one laid over there, about 3.5 foot, but he's this big around. I look over there, and I'm like, this is not good. My wife would have burned the house. I mean, I'm like, Rusty, I got a problem here. I got to go. He goes, what is it? I said, pretty nice snake in the garage. He goes, yeah, you do have a problem. So I hang the phone up, open the garage door up, and thinking he's probably going to run and go under one of my shelves, and I'm going to have an issue. But I got like a boat paddle so I could push him outside, because I don't like killing them, dude. I mean, you know what I mean? I just don't randomly kill snakes. And he didn't move. He laid right there, let the garage door open. He was trying to get to that moisture. He had been in that garage for 2 weeks, and he was about dried out. And I'm like, dude, he just never even moved. I just scooted him right outside. He got outside and just kind of crawled around. I don't even know whatever happened to him. But, dude, he'd been in there. He'd been in my boat. He had rowed home with me, and I had opened all of my lids up before I left, and he had crawled out the hole of my boat and into my garage.
My goodness.
Dude. He had been under the console is the only place he could have gotten in the hole of my boat. He had been around my feet at some point, me in the boat.
Like I'm lucky. Like I can handle them. Like I don't kill them now. You know, if they're there, Brett and I are close enough that, he loves them, and I guess he's rubbed off on me a little bit. And, I'm like, well, they're pretty cool. They've got their place. Like they're not aggressive. They're not coming to try to bite you or anything stupid.
No.
All that's just urban folklore that we've all been told it ain't true. But I would not have been super happy about that. Like I still don't like them. I tolerate them, but don't like them.
Me, I'm the same way, dude. They don't bother me, but if you stick your feet on your console and take off and you look down there and one is laying across your ankles, that's a problem.
Yeah, I agree.
That's a problem.
I would agree. We'd have to have a carpet cleaning, a underwear cleaning, and a boat cleaning.
But I mean, I don't know. I'd be like, oh my God. I mean, it'd be like abandoned ship. You know what I mean?
Just give them a boat.
God, it's terrible. That's twice it's happened It happened back several years ago. I had a mouse in my boat. So I had my boat in my old boat shed, which is basically it's just a shed. It wasn't in there on concrete. It wasn't heated. It wasn't cooled, and anything could get in there. Hell, we're running up the lake one day, a big thunderstorm coming. So I'm rolling. We're up here in Watts Bar, just me and a friend of mine. I'm rolling down the lake. Dude, I look at my feet and I look down, and thank God I didn't see it until it had crawled up. Its tail was literally on my leg. And I had my rain pants on. I didn't feel it. And it was a big old rat snake.
Oh my
He came
goodness.
out from under the console, got on I didn't even see him until my buddy's screaming. He's in a passenger seat. We're doing like 60, bad storm coming. And I'm like, oh my God, that's a snake. And he's on the front deck. And the wind's catching him. He's like lifting off the front deck of the wind. So dude's panicked. He is literally on the back deck.
He's about to come off and just wrap around everybody.
My God. So I didn't even let up. I just kept on rolling, hoping he's going to blow around his neck.
Yeah.
Well, he didn't. So he runs up and gets around my troll. I had to grab him by the tail and pull him out from under my trolling motor and throw him in the lake, and he swims off.
My goodness.
Yeah.
I
didn't have any more rat, though. The rat was gone.
Well, there you go. They do serve a purpose. Well, Andy, I really appreciate you taking time out to talk to us. I have had a blast. I've learned a lot about, shallow water fishing and some Tennessee River stuff today. Thank you a ton. If people want to see more of your content, look you up on Facebook, Instagram. You got them all?
Yep. Andy Morgan Fishing. Hit us up there, and we got a little info. We got good news, bad news. We got it all.
May wind up seeing a big deer this fall if you stay tuned long enough. So
that'd be nice.
Andy, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
All right, brother. Appreciate you.
Yeah, you can take it to the bank.